All right, it is that magic hour. Good evening, everybody, and hello. And welcome to our 34th annual Legislative Forum. Children with, I gotta have it put on. For children and with developmental delays and people with intellectual and or developmental disabilities. Well, my name is Kyle Matheson. I'm one of your gracious and thank you for being on a go. And I do live in the 32nd Legislative District in North Seattle. I've been an advocate for over 40 plus years in different advocacy world. And I love this every time I get to do things like this. Now it's my great pleasure to introduce my co-MC for this evening, Mahan, who will introduce himself. Mahan?
Yes, sir. All right, thanks very much, Kyle, and good evening, everybody. How's everybody doing tonight? Look, I get it. It's Thursday, aka Friday evening. But we can do better than that. How's everybody doing tonight? I love the enthusiasm. I love the energy. And for those of you who do not know me, my name is Mahat Dahir, and I reside in the 33rd Legislative District, which is in South King County. As a matter of fact, which is like 5-10 minutes west from here. So there's your geography lesson for the day. But all jokes aside, I started my advocacy journey here in this space 2 years ago, and I'm thrilled to be here tonight to not only co-MC with my guy Kyle, but also help to create long-lasting changes in our society. Thank you.
Actually, my name. Oh, forgive me. I'm sorry. I have to turn my script. Thank you. Now, before I'm Kyle. Before we get started, let me make sure that everyone can access our technology or for the event, because we're doing this via live stream, so that eventually we can be able to see it. For our guests that are using our interpretation headsets, anytime you have experiencing any technical issues, please connect with Joanne and Monica, and they're in the back just right out to the door if they can be able to raise their hands and say hi. Thank you. Also, we do encourage everyone to speak slowly for our interpreters and to explain acronyms. And you know what? There's a new feature this year. New feature for this event this year, And Mahan, my great co-host, will go over that. Mahan?
Thank you again, Kyle. And as you mentioned, there are new features that are available this year. And at any point during the event, if you need to access a quiet and darkened space, you can use our quiet room, which is located on the second floor of this building. And you can return whenever you are ready to do so. And also, for those who are in need of movement, you can move between this room and the family move as you please. The family room has activities as well as access to the live stream of tonight's event. And please keep in mind that the interpreter and the headsets will not work if you leave this room. And now, with that out of the way, and leading tonight's land acknowledgement is the one and only Catherine Festa of the Haida tribe and a member of the King County Native American Leadership Council. Catherine?
Sinatla, good evening. I am the granddaughter of Elizabeth Collison. I am the daughter of Marina Jones. I am Catherine Festa, Haida Raven from the Double Fin Killer Whale clan. I live in the 30th district. I bring them with me everywhere. November was Native American Heritage Month, and I hope that you had the opportunity to explore your local tribes and their cultures, and don't stop there. Keep on exploring. It's important to understand the long-standing history that has brought you to reside on this land and to seek to understand your place with that history. We hope this will strengthen our spiritual bonds and give meaning to our lands and our people. Land acknowledgements do not exist in a past tense or historical context. Colonialism is current, ongoing process, and we need to build our mindfulness of our present participation. Most of the lands we live on, sleep on, and work on were in fact taken away from the indigenous people without their consent. This land acknowledgement recognizes where we are all on lands inhabited and protected by indigenous peoples for tens of thousands of years. Many tribes' lands were taken away from them before a treaty was even signed. Although land acknowledgements are powerful statements, they are only meaningful when they are coupled with authentic and sustained relationships with indigenous communities. And so, I'd like for all of us to acknowledge and show respect to the First Peoples, the indigenous peoples, our elders and ancestors, past, present, and future, on whose land we stand. Today, we offer deep gratitude to the Muckleshoots, Snoqualmie, Skykomish, Tulalip, Stillaguamish, Suquamish, Puyallup, and Duwamish tribes, and to the Coast Salish people whose land and water supports us. Let us also commit to learning more about the histories and celebrate their culture and traditions that remain a vital part of our communities. We are still here. Thank you.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you, Catherine, for your wonderful words of wisdom and dedicating this land to our forefathers. Now, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce you to our King County Deputy Executive Director, Ms. Shannon Braddock. Shannon?
Good evening, everyone. It is such an honor to be here to represent the county executive this evening, and to be with all of you, and frankly, so many amazing people from our King County team. So just a shout out to all of our King County staff who are here working hard this evening and always. Thank you. I admit that I am not wearing my glasses, so I cannot actually differentiate any of them. My apologies. And I understand the unofficial theme for the platform this evening from Kyle and Mahad is professionalism and fire. And I feel like that's already happening. So thank you, everybody. For 34 years, King County residents, families, and disability rights champions have joined this event to share their stories and learn more about the ways that we can improve our systems to better meet the needs of people with developmental disabilities in our communities. And every year, our state legislators also show up to listen and learn and share their priorities. I want to thank all of you, for your support of people with developmental delays or intellectual and developmental disabilities. It has been a big year in King County, and for our work, particularly in the Department of Community and Human Services. Voters and community partners and leaders continue to affirm a commitment to supporting a robust human services workforce and finding innovative solutions to meet the needs of our residents. In April, voters approved the Crisis Care Centers levy to create 5 new regional crisis care centers, preserve and restore the dramatic loss of residential treatment beds, and grow the behavioral health workforce pipeline. Then, in August, voters affirmed another critical investment, this time approving the Veterans, Seniors, and Human Services levy for a 4th time with its highest rating in the levy's history. Thank you. This levy sustains and expands innovative partnerships in programming, comprehensive case management, and behavioral health counseling for veterans, their families, and their caregivers. We have also made significant progress on our goal to build more affordable housing in the region. Just this November, we celebrated the grand opening of Pride Place, an affordable senior housing complex focused on the lesbian, gay, bisexual, queer, questioning, intersex, asexual, and other identities community within Capitol Hill. It's located next to public transit to ensure equitable access to opportunities and resources. But pivoting from our work with seniors to some of our youngest residents, the implementation of the second levy of the Best Starts for Kids initiative is now well underway. We're working with more than 450 organizations to reach more than 264,000 children, young people, family, and community members across King County. As part of this most recent levy, we're happy to now help fund our School to Work program. Since 2020, the program has connected nearly 600 students with developmental disabilities in King County to employment services. This leads to accessing long-term services, and these funds are being used to expand outreach efforts with a greater focus on Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities. We are pleased that the 2023 to 2024 cohort will be the largest single cohort of students served by the program since it began in 2006. Through Best Starts, we're also reaching nearly 7,000 very young children who have delays or disabilities, and we're reaching their families with our Early Support for Infants and Toddlers program. Positive social and emotional development is one key measure, with 73% of children showing progress. That is why tonight's forum is so important. We get the chance to learn more about how this work is evolving and intersecting with essential supports for individuals with intellectual disabilities and developmental delays, for their families, and for providers. And though we face challenges, we create and respond to incredible opportunities to support a county and a state where all of us can thrive. Together, our governments can incorporate community voices and perspectives into our policies, building systems that expand our reach and create long-lasting supports with positive impacts for all our families. I want to thank all of you for your time and your commitment to this work, and thank you for having me here this evening. Thank you.
Great job, Deputy Executive Braddock, and thank you for your warming words. And so now I would like to introduce you to the Department of Community and Social Services Equity, Racial, and Social Justice Leads, Sung Cho and Maria Guizar. And I apologize if I mispronounce your names. This is just a disclaimer here, so forgive me if I mispronounce your names. Sung, Maria, all yours.
Buenas noches, mi nombre es María Guizar. Gusto estar en presencia de todos ustedes, so it's a pleasure to be here in the presence of all of you guys. It's an honor to work on equity, racial, and social justice issues for the Department of Community and Human Services. We know that people with disabilities face greater challenges daily for equal access to services and resources, and this is further compounded with intersectionality of race, sexual orientation, as well as other identities that represent an individual. We have heard this directly from residents with disabilities who are Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and families who access supports reported they experience racial, cultural, and language biases. Additionally, disabilities are not always apparent, which brings unique challenges to people with non-apparent disabilities. We must respond to these needs with better multilingual and culturally responsive supports. This is why it is so important that we collaborate, that we work in collaboration to disrupt systems and structures that do not advance true belonging, equity, racial, and disability justice. To truly achieve disability justice and equity, racial, and social justice, we must acknowledge our interconnectedness and the many identities we experience as human beings.
Really good, great to see you all here in the in-person event. Our immigrant, refugee, and multilingual communities often face barriers accessing needed services. This is heightened for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. In 2022, we established a Department of Community and Human Services Language Access Program to ensure our department provides supports while being linguistically accessible and culturally relevant. We've created internal systems so county staff can act fast when an interpretation need arises. We've purchased 4 sets of simultaneous interpretation equipment, with each set supporting interpretation services for 60 members of the public. We are pleased to recognize the amazing work of the Developmental Disabilities and Early Childhood Supports Division. They continue to lead the way for our department when it comes to language access. They constantly ensure all documents shared online are translated into top languages spoken in King County. The Early Support for Infants and Toddlers program funds spoken language and American Sign Language interpretation for their agencies when working with children and families. In addition, the division's School to Work program coordinates interpreted individual meetings and hosts community-specific meetings. They also have their documents and videos transcripts available in 20 languages. The Developmental Disabilities and Early Childhood Supports Division ensures this does not stop with them. The division supports language access in the King County Board of Developmental Disabilities for linguistic accessibility. All meetings include live closed captioning and American Sign Language interpreters. They also encourage meeting participants to use self-descriptions, speak slowly, and avoid acronyms. As we provide programmatic support to the Department of Community and Human Services, divisions, and fund translations, we are better able to get important information out to all our communities. We are committed to bringing equity, racial, and social justice and disability justice into changing policies and practices and make King County a more inclusive community where all people feel a sense of belonging. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for you, Sun and Maria. Many of you may recognize Sun from the years of service in the Developmental Disabilities and Early Childhood Ed Support Division. We are excited to see him in this new role. And now we'll hear from our directors from the division, Miss Megan Cromer and her deputy director, Holly Wu. Megan and Holly.
I'm Megan Cromar, Division Director for the Developmental Disabilities and Early Childhood Supports Division. I'm also the mom of 2 young people with developmental disabilities.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Holly Wu. I'm the Deputy Director for the King County Developmental Disabilities and Early Childhood Supports Division. So we're so glad you're all here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Megan and Holly, for your wonderful words. And so now we would like to invite our elected officials who joined us here tonight to introduce themselves. And to the elected officials sitting on these 2 desks, please introduce yourselves. And please introduce yourselves
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Claudia Kaufman. I'm state senator for the 47th Legislative District, which is, yay, 47th, the mighty 47th, Kent, Covington, and Auburn. I'm happy to be here. I've attended this event for a number of years. I am a mother of a daughter with developmental disabilities, and I hear stories of experiences that I have experienced myself, and so I'm with you 100% of the way. I know and understand and feel your pain at some of the processes, and I'm ready to get to work and get things going.
I'm Bob Hasagawa, Senator for the 11th Legislative District, which is where you're sitting right now. So I want to welcome you to the 11th.
State Representative Steve Berquist, a junior member here in the 11th District. Also happy to be a teacher in the Renton School District. Thank you.
Tina Orwell, I have the honor of representing the 33rd Legislative District with the SeaTac, Buren, Normandy Park, Des Moines, and Kent. And I am a social worker. My first job was working with Creative Living Services, supporting people in apartments.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Claire Wilson, Senator from the 30th Legislative District in South King County. That is, woohoo, Federal Way, Auburn, unincorporated King County, Algona Pacific, Milton, a little bit of Kent, and a little bit of Des Moines. Happy to be here tonight.
This mic is heavy. Hello, everyone. My name is Representative Jamila Taylor. I am Senator Wilson's seatmate in the 30th. Also, I am the current chair of the Developmental Disability Advocacy Caucus. And I'm always trying to gather more of my colleagues to become members of the Hero Support Team. We support you out in community. As also, I would just want to say a shout out to my mother who's here, and at home, my brother who's a little bit shy, my brother with developmental disabilities is at home, and his birthday is on Saturday. And if we could virtually shout him out, happy birthday. And I'm so proud to share that birthday with him as his twin.
Boy. Okay, then you got a mic, sir?
It's hard to follow Jamila Taylor. Good evening. Good evening. I'm Representative Roger Goodman from the 45th Legislative District, which includes Kirkland, Redmond, Woodinville, Duval, and Sammamish. This is only my 16th forum. I did miss the ice storm. Remember the ice storm? I couldn't make it, sorry. But I am so happy that we are finally in person. The virtual didn't work. It actually didn't even work, right, last year. So it's so good to be here again. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I'm Daria Farivar, representative from the 46th District in Northeast Seattle. I can't tell you how wonderful it is to be here. This is my community. You all are the community that made me the advocate that I am, starting out at Open Doors with Ginger and her team, working with Hodan, working at Disability Rights Washington. I've done everything from helping with the interpreter coordination to helping speakers at this event. And I also can't tell you how excited I am to see the #1 priority on this list after working on Representative Orwell's first version of language access all the way in 2016. It's so good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Tough act to follow. They all are. So I'm just really glad to be here. My name is Chris Stearns. This is my first forum, so I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah. And I am a representative from the 47th District, which, as Senator Kaufman mentioned, is Auburn, Kent, and Covington, and also some unincorporated parts of the county, too. I'll also thank you, Catherine, if you're still around. There she is, for the great Native American, welcome. I'm Navajo, so, totally down with that, and thank you again.
Hello.
I am Mandy Appa, as some of you can tell. I am not Senator Peterson. I am representing him tonight. He could not make it. It's actually the third time he couldn't be here, which was the snowstorm. He represents 43rd District, which is Laurelhurst, First Hill, Capitol Hill, and many other neighborhoods in Seattle. Special education funding has been and continues to be his top priority, so I'm happy to be here and represent him tonight.
Good evening, everyone. I'm State Senator Javier Valdez from the 46th Legislative District, which is Northeast Seattle. Sorry we were a little late with my colleague, Rapalette, who will introduce himself. We had an event at the University of Washington, so we drove down I-5 and got here just in time, so it's great to be here.
And I'm Representative Jerry Paulette, rounding out that 46th district. Glad to be here.
Hopefully we didn't miss anybody. Did everybody have a chance to speak? And Senator Valdez, I'm glad you came here unscathed, sir.
He drove.
Thank you all. For all jokes aside, thank you all for being here tonight. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Megan and Holly, who have some more words for you. Megan, Holly?
He had to bring up last year.
We are so glad to be in person together again. Tonight, we're here to share our 2024 legislative priorities. We developed these priorities through deep conversations with community members, many providers, and through our own reflections on surveys and our ongoing performance measurement and evaluation work at King County. Services for people with developmental delays and intellectual and/or developmental disabilities should be sustainable and promote equity, inclusion, and belonging. The 5 priorities that we're going to share with you tonight aim to achieve that vision and reflect input from impacted communities across our region, especially centering the experiences of people with disabilities and Black, Indigenous, and people of color.
So when developing policy, we ask legislators to remember the stories that you will hear tonight and to use a racial, social, and disability justice approach to eliminate disparities and ensure language and cultural supports are in place to serve King County's diverse population. In King County, 28% of residents over age 5 speak a language other than English at home, which is higher than the nearly 21% statewide. More than 24% of King County residents were born outside of the United States. People who are Black, Indigenous, and people of color already face barriers when accessing services. And there are more barriers when they or their loved ones have intellectual and developmental disabilities. And when their first language is not English. When we reduce those barriers, we provide better supports for everyone. We need language access across all systems and programs. And our governments must expand supports to ensure access to services for multilingual and multicultural residents. Our first legislative priority is to ask the legislature to improve access to culturally rooted and linguistically accessible services by investing in interpretation, translation, cultural navigation, and other language and cultural supports. Our first speaker, Mireya, will share her story. Mireya, are you ready to share your story? And the microphone is right in front.
Buenas noches, legisladores e invitados de honor. Mi nombre es Mireya Barrera. Soy madre de un adolescente.
Good evening, legislators and honored guests. My name is Mireya Barrera. I'm the mother of an 18-year-old teenager who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 4.
A quien le diagnosticaron autismo cuando tenía 4 años. Vivimos en la ciudad de Auburn, en el distrito 30.
We live in the city of Auburn in the 30th district.
El acceso al idioma y al apoyo cultural son importantes para mí.
Language access and cultural supports are important to me.
Tradicionalmente e incluso hoy, las escuelas y proveedores
Traditionally and even today, the schools and providers
cuentan con personal cuyo su primer idioma es español,
have staff whose first language is Spanish,
pero no tienen experiencia en interpretación.
but they do not have experience interpreting.
No han considerado que solicito intérprete.
They have not considered that I have asked for an interpreter.
No siento que me incluyan,
I don't feel that they include me
porque no entiendo la traducción y la interpretación.
because I don't understand the translation and the interpretation.
Los distritos escolares deben brindar asistencia lingüística con intérpretes
The school districts ought to offer access with interpreters
y traductores competentes y apropiados.
and adequate and professional translation.
No se nos han brindado servicios apropiados y adecuados.
They have not offered up appropriate and adequate services.
He hecho el esfuerzo de inglés
I have made the effort to learn English,
y he contribuido en este país trabajando
and I contributed in this country working,
y cuido a mi hijo,
and I take care of my son.
pero es complejo memorizar toda la terminología,
But it's complicated to memorize all of the terminology
de los profesionales y de todas las agencias.
Of all the professionals and all the agencies.
Creo que el lenguaje es evolutivo.
I believe language is evolutionary.
Al no acceder a la información de primera mano traducida,
By not accessing first-hand translated information
e interpretada,
and interpreted information,
nuestros hijos, como el mío,
our children, like mine,
pierden la oportunidad de acceder a servicios
lose the opportunity to access services
que los conducen a una mejor integración en la sociedad
that could lead them to a better integration in society
y a una buena calidad de vida y de independencia.
and a good quality of life and independence.
Acceder a servicios que satisfagan nuestras necesidades
Accessing services that satisfy our necessities
es un sueño como padres,
is a dream for parents,
pero reconocer los derechos de nuestros hijos
but acknowledging the rights of our children
y los nuestros como padres
and ours as parents
es un desafío con el que vivimos,
is a challenge that we live with every day,
cuyo progreso parece ser muy lejano.
whose progress seems very distant.
Tengo acceso a programas y servicios,
I have access to programs and services,
pero reconozco que mi proveedor de servicios
but I recognize that my service provider
no tiene la autoridad de realizar mejoras en los servicios
does not have the authority to make improvements in the service
de las escuelas y proveedores.
Regarding the schools and the providers.
A pesar de eso, hacen grandes esfuerzos para mantenernos informados
Even though they make great efforts to keep us informed
y mejor preparados.
and better prepared.
Cuando tomen decisiones,
When decisions are made,
recuerden mi historia.
remember my story.
Recuerden a todas las familias multiculturales
Remember all the multicultural families
cuyo su primer idioma no es el inglés,
whose first language is not English,
y cómo afectarán los servicios que mi hijo
and how this will affect the services that my son
y otras personas con discapacidad del desarrollo
and other people with developmental disabilities
reciben y por derecho merecen.
and receive by rights and that they deserve.
Esto no solo es importante para mi hijo
This is not only important for my son
y para mí,
and for me,
sino también para todos en general.
but for everyone in general.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria. And I also wanted to acknowledge that Representative Hackney has joined us, so thank you for joining us. And now our next speaker, Khalid will share his story.
Good evening, legislators and honored guests. My name is Khalid Sarad, and I am from the 30th District. I am currently 23 years old, and I have autism. And I have recently graduated from the University of Washington, Tacoma with a bachelor's in law and policy. I was hired into a self-advocacy educator position at Open Door for Multicultural Families. My job is to share my experiences and speak on behalf of neurodivergent individuals and people of color. I identify strongly with both communities as I understand exactly what people like me need to live a full life. Language access and cultural support are important to me because I am a child of two immigrant parents, my father being from Uganda and my mother from Kenya. It was incredibly difficult for my parents, who speak Somali and Swahili, to navigate the systems that are impacting my life. They struggled for years to represent my unique needs, not because they didn't understand me, but because they didn't understand the system. People from diverse backgrounds are rarely provided the tools to effectively communicate and understand people that make decisions for their families. Growing up with autism, school and work were very difficult for me to process and fully absorb, as well as even though my parents didn't give up, I know my parents needed extra help to get me what I needed. For example, my mother needed interpreters to help her understand my DDA, SSI, and IEP meetings. She needed things explained to her in a way that not only made sense to her, but also allowed her to voice her own questions, thoughts, and concerns about everything involving her son's life. Having language and cultural support for my family improved my own education, healthcare, and provided me with other opportunities. My wish is that all people with disability from different racial groups who speak different languages have access to this support. We shouldn't be discriminated against because of who we are. When you are making your decision, please remember my story, and the language access and cultural supports are important to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Khalid. In 2022, 5,985 children were served through our early supports for infants and toddlers strategy. But in 2023, the number of children served in this program rose by 19%. Right? Clap. This reflects something good. Yeah. This does reflect something good. It reflects that people in the community are getting access to these really important needed services. Now for the hard part. Early supports for infants and toddlers is providing more supports without adequate funding. We have to find ways to ensure that the funding matches the needs in the community. Our second legislative priority is to ask the legislature to fund the first month of services provided by our early support for infants and toddlers agencies with special education funds. Early support for infants and toddler services are so important, and the work being done by our providers must be fully funded. We have to ensure that we have a sustainable statewide system available for all the children and families in our communities who need it. Morgan is going to share her family's experience with these services.
Good evening, legislators and honored guests. My name is Morgan. This is my husband, Alex, and our one-year-old Juniper. We are from the 1st District. We'd like to talk to you about early supports for infants and toddlers, aka ESIT, and the impact that it's had on our daughter's life. Our daughter Juniper was born prematurely at 26 weeks, weighing just 1 pound, 7 ounces, 11 inches long. To put that into perspective, she was about the same size as an elf on the shelf. A few days after birth, she was diagnosed with hydrocephalus, a buildup of fluid in the brain's ventricles, after she had a brain hemorrhage. Once she reached the weight of 2 pounds, she went on her first car ride in an intensive care unit ambulance to Seattle Children's Neonatal Intensive Care Unit, or the NICU, where Juniper underwent her first of 3 brain surgeries to place a drain for the excess fluid. Her doctors could not tell us with certainty what her future looked like, but we were told that she would have lifelong disabilities, and it would be unlikely she'd ever walk or talk or eat by mouth. As soon as we received this prognosis, we knew we wanted to do everything in our power to give Juniper every opportunity available to us. So we did what we could, and we started Googling and joining online groups of parents like us, and the big thing that stood out to us over and over was early intervention. Almost every parent we connected with stressed how important it was to get her into early supports and to do it as soon as possible. Within the first 3 years of a child's life, 85% of brain development occurs, and we did not want to waste a second. After 82 days in the NICU, at a whopping 4.5 pounds, Juniper was discharged, and we were able to bring our tiny baby home. We wasted no time in getting her enrolled in our local ESIT provider one-on-one early support services. We had our intake evaluation scheduled before we left the hospital. Within a month, Juniper was already participating in early supports. She was just 4 months old at the time, 1 month adjusted for prematurity. Our ESIT occupational therapist came to us, which was amazing because we really didn't leave the house for the first 3 months after Juniper was discharged. Our occupational therapist, Heather, guided us through bottle feeding Juniper in a way that was the safest and most comfortable for her. She helped advocate for us and guided us through the transition from a nasal feeding tube to a G-tube, where Juniper was able to more comfortably receive nutrition directly to her stomach through her abdomen rather than through her nose. Juniper took to the G-tube well. She was noticeably happier and more comfortable. With Heather's guidance and instruction, we helped Juniper continue to work on her oral feeding skills, and she has made significant progress with feeding. Now at 16 months old, Juniper still uses her G-tube, but with support from her therapist, we've been able to transition from purees to soft finger foods to shredded meats to even her feeding herself waffles and pancakes, foods we'd been told would never be a possibility for her. Our ESIT therapist taught my husband and I how to play and interact with Juniper in ways that were not only fun and playful, but purposeful and contributing to her development, like how to make tummy time fun even when it was not her favorite activity. And just this week, Juniper rolled all the way to her tummy from her back, something we've been working with her therapist since the beginning of the year towards. We are so thankful for her team of ESIT therapists. We're pretty sure that Juniper thinks that they're just coming over for a play date. As soon as she sees them at our front door, she excitedly reaches for them and says hi. In addition to providing one-on-one services, Juniper's ESIT team also works with other members of her care team, including her many doctors and therapists, fostering collaboration that ensures Juniper gets holistic, high-quality care. Juniper is continuing to make strides in her ESIT therapy sessions and would not be thriving in the way that she is now without the expertise and the support of the folks there. When you're making your decisions, please remember Juniper's story, and the early support for infants and toddlers is important to her and to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. Employment and community inclusion supports provide critical stability in the lives of adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Services connect individuals with employment or other community activities that provide purpose and belonging so individuals live happier and healthier lives. However, the current staffing shortage has reduced or suspended services for many people. A survey of employment and community inclusion service providers showed that only 43% said they can fully serve current participants if they are paid at the current rate. Our third legislative priority is to ask the legislature to increase employment and community inclusion provider rates as recommended in the State Developmental Disabilities Administration's October 1st, 2022 Employment and Day Rate Study. And next, Mohammed will share about the importance that employment plays in his life.
I got it. My name is Mohammed Hassan. I possible with this disability. I live in 11th district. I've been trying to get a job. I had been this difficult. Being interview or not hearing back for a appointment has been hard. Sources, poor specialist has many difficulty to look for work, as there are the ones that with help in the job search. Finding the job means they can be part of the community. Can have friends or feeling better about myself. A job means that I will be at home. I also try to be active in my community, enjoying activities to like going to the mall, movie theaters, events, play basketball with friends and families. I would like to explore communities in negotiating service to help me building connections in my community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story, Mohammed.
Thank you.
In King County, 1 in 10 people who are experiencing homelessness have an intellectual or developmental disability. In Washington State, approximately 37,000 adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities are facing housing insecurity. Housing stability for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities depends on access to a range of housing options and pairing homes with support services that enable people to live as independently as possible. To best support people, investments are needed in both affordable housing structures and the housing support services workforce. Our fourth legislative priority is to ask the legislature to implement the recommendations in the State Developmental Disability Administration's October 1st, 2022 Housing Fund Priority Study Report. Expand permanent revenue sources for affordable housing, and invest in a housing support services workforce. Dek will now share his story.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dek Rage, and I'm the father of Omar Abdul Qadir. He's the one right next to me. He's still 12 years old, and he's diagnosed Hassan 8, HSAN number 8, which is he doesn't feel any pain at all. He can hurt himself or get burned, and he's not feeling any pain at all. So I want to share my story about housing. I'm from the 33 district. Tonight, I'll be talking about housing, accessibility, and accommodations. My son, Omar, uses a wheelchair, and we live in a house or apartment that has no accommodation for his disability. When I'm saying that, it means no wheelchair access. But I'm very sorry that legislators only know the service for wheelchair, but as a special need families, we need more than that. What our kids need is not only wheelchair. For example, Omar didn't get a shower in the bathroom last 3 years. Because of that, there is no accessible bathroom which can accommodate his needs. Because when we take him to the restroom, he gets frustrated and he injures himself. It will hurt him, he will hurt himself, and he will hurt us, which caused him to go to Seattle Children for 3 months. And for that reason, we didn't take him to the shower for the last 3 years. He's 12 years old right now. He's getting older. He's strong. And there is no service in place. I don't know if they will come in the future. We tried, me and my wife, who was sitting behind me, to get a housing which might accommodate our child's needs or other disabilities and health needs. But whenever we find a house or apartment, there is two obstacles. One for financial, and second is they are not accommodated or they are not accessible for numerous needs. Maybe you might find an apartment that has a wheelchair accessible or has elevator, but they don't have accommodation about his special needs because he has a unique, different conditions. So then the second condition is like we are family who are working together, and whenever we go to housing or apartment, they will say your income is over the low income. So I'm working hard to live or survive. Are you trying to help Omar, or are you making a barrier to be holding me back? So I'm just confused that the system making us holding us back or helping us to develop and help our future for our children. So the second barrier is for the lack of services that we need our children. And for the DTA housing is very crucial. Whenever even if I go to the Habitat for Humanity, which I've been working with them last 2 years, they have a service which is saying if you have a disability kid, we can help you. But when you talk to them, they will say to you, we don't have a customized house. So what service? How can you help me? Because I have a unique service. So right now, I would like the legislator in front of me to remember our needs and the history, the challenge that we have for now. And I'm hoping that you will put to the account for that the challenge that all families with a disability or special needs have. I really thank everyone who joined here, and I want to thank for Washington Multicultural Services Link, who invited me here, Holden, our HUB team. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dek and Omar, for being here tonight and sharing your story. Next, we're going to hear from Becky.
I want to talk about not following children. Good evening, legislators and honored guests. My name is Becky Bisbee. I live in the 41st District with my husband and my 30-year-old daughter, Paige. She has significant intellectual and developmental disabilities and is nonverbal. She requires support in all aspects of her daily living. The lack of affordable housing with the necessary supports for our daughter to live in her community is a huge issue for us as well. Paige received a Section 8 voucher in 2020, but we surrendered the voucher after a year of trying to find a place that met her needs near her job and her day program. We also entered Paige into a roommate matching service. We have spoken to a few families, but have concluded that the do-it-yourself model does not work for us. Our next step was connecting with an adult family home provider, which had an opening in Bothell. Paige was on the short list for the home, but ultimately not selected. In January of this year, Paige received a core waiver through the State Developmental Disabilities Administration, which provides many services, including residential services. Yet the high cost of housing and the lack of caregivers who can earn more money working at the mall or at a fast food joint has proven to be as much a challenge for the supporting living agencies as it was for us. Due to the rates paid to supported living providers, the turnover rates average 50% or higher each and every year. I retired about 10 years early because Paige's dad could no longer be her primary caregiver. We have made many difficult and critical decisions during Paige's lifetime. Deciding as a family who will take care of our loved one packs an emotional punch like no previous experience. We still hope to get Paige settled in a safe and healthy environment where she will be active and supported in the community. Please think of Paige when considering accessible and affordable housing and support for services for people with disabilities. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you, Becky. We know that many of the legislators tonight also attended the King County Behavioral Health and Recovery Legislative Forum just a few weeks ago. We appreciate your willingness and commitment to our community by joining us again tonight. We want you to know that individuals who have intellectual and developmental disabilities and behavioral health conditions are part of the growing behavioral health crisis, and they experience many barriers to accessing services. There is a shortage of workers and mental health providers who do not have the training or experience to meet their needs. Nearly 2 in every 5 people eligible for State Developmental Disabilities Administration services also have behavioral health support needs. Our 5th legislative priority is to ask the legislature to invest in recruitment and retention strategies to develop a behavioral health workforce that is responsive to the needs of individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Habiba will now share her story.
I'm the Somali interpreter. I'm going to be reading Habiba's statement. This is Habiba, and this is her nephew, Yusuf. My name is Habiba Hassan, and I'm here today to share my sister's story. I'm with her son, Yusuf Badel, who is also my nephew. This is Yusuf on her left. They live in the 37th district. Yusuf has developmental disabilities. A couple years ago, he was in and out of the hospital for months. He was hospitalized because he had a mental health crisis. He lost a lot of weight and was taken off all his medication. After his hospitalization, he was released to go home with no additional support or help. This period had some challenging behaviors which impacted family members and neighbors. During this crucial period, my sister had other kids who also needed her attention. Behavioral support from mental health providers with experience serving people with developmental disabilities would have been helpful at that time. Had it not been for the support from my sister's neighbors and community, I don't think she would have made it through this period. That's all.
Thank you, Habiba, for sharing your story. And now Robin will share a story from a provider perspective.
Hey everyone, good evening. I'm Robin Tatsuda, Executive Director at the ARC of King County. I live in the 36th district, and our agency individuals with developmental disabilities and their families across the entire county and beyond. As a King County provider agency, we help individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, or IDD, of all ages across the whole lifespan, including their families. We help them navigate disability resources, systems, including mental health and behavioral health care. We've recognized a huge gap in the intersection of IDD and mental health for many years, which only got worse during and after COVID. Many youth and adults with IDD tell us they cannot locate a mental health provider who understands the combination of IDD and mental health care. Because of that, we came in providers at a stage of preventative care. We are seeing more and more individuals going into crisis and their caregivers turning to emergency services such as 911, emergency departments, and other crisis type services. However, most of these crisis services do not understand the intersection of IDD and mental health. For example, one mom we support told us that after spending hours in the emergency department with our autistic son, due to his escalated agitation and unsafe behaviors, she was told that it's normal for autistic people to hear voices, and there's nothing that they could do to help. The family was sent home without any kind of support. I want to make sure we're clear. It is not normal for autistic people to hear voices. Okay. The ARC of King County is also a supported living provider. We support adults with IDD who live in the community and are no longer with their families. We are seeing in that program more and more of experiencing increased mental health challenges, especially since the pandemic. But we have very little resources for support. As a provider, we are not experts in mental health or behavioral health care, but we are being challenged to deliver appropriate services to people with co-occurring IDD and mental health conditions without any expertise. Sadly, in the last 2 months, of our supported living participants ended up in the hospital because of a health crisis, and I'll tell you about them. One individual, I'll call him John, was using antipsychotic medication and has been stable for over a decade. For unclear reasons, the doctor prescribing his medicine decided to slowly take him off the medication. With this decrease, John started to become more and more escalated, demonstrating behaviors we'd never seen before, including heightened anxiety, violence toward his roommates and staff, and running away from his home. We were not given any direction on what to watch for with the changes in his medication or what to do if we identified any negative results. Instead, as John escalated, we were forced to turn to the mental health crisis lines. They directed us to use a mental health urgent care clinic in Snohomish County. That clinic is only open Monday through Friday business hours, and we were in crisis on a Friday night. Eventually, John ended up in a hospital emergency department where they admitted him for about 2 weeks. The hospital restarted his original antipsychotic, and the John stabilized and returned home. After discharge, we still continue to struggle to find a doctor who can prescribe him medication safely. Another program participant, I'll call her Sarah, was hospitalized for 5 months after several months of mental health deterioration and inadequate professional support. We assisted Sarah to seek mental health services and even brought her to the emergency department to get psychiatric help. However, she was turned away repeatedly until she reached crisis levels. Sadly, Sarah did not get the mental health support she needed soon enough, and she went into a catatonic state for months while in the psychiatric intensive care unit. Due to lack of trained mental health professionals and no advanced training available to us as providers, both individuals ended up in severe crisis. John and Sarah continue to struggle daily with the long-term effects related to those crises. These are just 2 examples of how our community is impacted by the current lack of behavioral health workforce that is responsive to our unique needs. Thanks.
Thank you, Robin. And thank you to all of our other speakers for sharing your stories with us tonight.
We want to share our deep gratitude to our really amazing MCs, Mahad and Kyle.
Yeah.
We also want to share our gratitude to all of the people who volunteered to help out with this event tonight. We had table hosts and event navigators and cultural navigators and lots of language access supports. We had community members and service providers that helped us spread the word about this being an in-person event again this year. And of course, all of the King County staff who are here from the Developmental Disabilities Division and many other divisions at King County. And of course, all of you. We see you, and we couldn't do this work without you. Your commitment to our community makes all the difference.
First of all, I would like to thank you. Thank you for being a pleasure, for being your MC, my co-MC with my friend Mahan. And it's been a wonderful time up here and leading your starting things up. I would like to thank Mahan for being my co-MC tonight, and it's been a great pleasure. Thank you very much. So,
I thank you very much, Kyle. I really appreciate those warming and kind words. It makes me less demoralized. I want to give a big shout out to all of you for showing up tonight and for our communities, and so that and people ask me all the time, like, where's the disability community? Well, this is all of you right here. So give yourselves a big round of applause. And with that out of the way, I would like to say good night and thanks for your company, and and happy holidays, and let's have a great legislative session. Thank you. Good night, everybody.